Welcome back to Philosophy Roulette for Sunday, the 22nd of March, 2020. It is Philosophy Roulette 27. I'm your host, Noah. Yeah, video show. So let's see, what do we got going? We're back on philpapers.org. We were doing some stuff from Thought. Let's warm up with an analysis paper. And we'll decide where to go after that. See, maybe there was like some even newer ones. Because that's how it worked the other day. Next issue, not the 2020 ones, but the forthcoming ones. All swamping, no problem. Joseph Bield. The swamping promise to explain why knowledge is epistemically better than true belief despite being no more true. Okay, let's see what that happens to be. If it's available. Nope, not available. That's a problem with this. Yeah, it's funny. They treat Phil People, the Firefox does, as a social network, and they stop at tracking me as if I'm worried about what David Chalmers is doing with my information. So maybe I should. I don't know. I mean, David Chalmers might be plotting the takeover of the world, and yeah, and it'd be bad if he was tracking me so much. A new cosmological argument from grounding. Many downloads. Maybe it's available. It is not available. Let's find out if it's on Scholar. It is. How nice is that? Yay! Okay, so there we go. That was easy. A new cosmological argument from grounding. Save file. Load file. Okay. Alright, so if you type exclamation point paper, exclamation point game, either one, but exclamation point paper in the chat, then you will be brought to the Phil Paper page, and you can get it just by going click on find on Scholar, and then it's right there. Yeah, and it's also, if you're watching this later, it's in the link will be in the description below. So, let's see what we have here. A new cosmological argument from grounding. And there we are. In this paper, I will present a new cosmological argument for the existence of an ultimate ground of all things. More precisely, I will present an argument for the thesis that there exists a unique X which satisfies the following two conditions. Everything other than X is ultimately grounded in X. X is grounded in nothing else. I mean, this is gonna be a big old fight between the paper I did a few days ago, where they said like you can't do grounding without getting weird results, and then this guy says, well, there's ultimate grounding. All right, so philosophical battleground here, or I don't want to use it's philosophical battle. Let's not use the word ground anymore. No one has ever to use the word ground out and ever again. Sorry. The argument therefore resembles some of the traditional cosmological arguments, but my argument differs substantially from the traditional ones in that no principle of sufficient reason is invoked. Okay. Instead, I will base my argument directly on considerations about grounding. Well, is principle of sufficient reason implied by grounding? I mean, it is half of one and half of a dozen and six of the other. I mean, it's like, let's find out. Before turning to the argument, let me make some clarifications about the terminology. Here I take grounding to be a certain kind of ontological dependence relation that holds between more fundamental... See, is the music too loud? I can't quite tell. It's fine for me. Well, it's just... One sec. Let me just double check. It's not like... Nah, it should be okay. Okay. Blasting here for you guys. You'd you're not here for the music. I mean, if you want to know what the music is, I'll specify later, but anyway. So when here I take grounding to be a certain kind of ontological dependence relation that holds between more fundamental and less fundamental entities. So when the existence of an entity is dependent upon the existence of some other entity or entities in the sense that the former exists in virtue of the latter, we say that the former is grounded in the latter, and we call the latter the ground of the former. When the ground contains a plurality of entities, we call each of them a partial ground, and call these entities taken together the full ground. Moreover, by x is ultimately grounded in y, I mean that x is grounded in y, or x is grounded in something which is grounded in y, or x is grounded in something which is grounded in something which is grounded in something in y, etc. If x is ultimately grounded in something, we say that x is ultimately grounded. Furthermore, if x is not grounded in anything else, we say that x is fundamental. Notice that here we follow the literature in taking grounding to be irreflexive, assuming that nothing grounds itself, and hence we may simply identify the fundamental with the ungrounded. Thus understood to say that there is a unique entity satisfying 1 and 2, to say that there is a fundamental entity and that ultimate grounds everything else. The prime mover! Let's just call it prime mover, how about that? Now it is the aim of a cosmological argument to provide a proof for the existence of such a being that satisfies 1 and 2, that is, an ungrounded ground of everything else, or an unmoved mover, yes, to use a more traditional phrase. In the next section, I will provide such an argument based on 3 principles of grounding. I will then consider some possible objections in the final section. A new cosmological argument. In this section, I present a new argument for the thesis that there is a unique fundamental entity that ultimately grounds everything else. I show that we can construct such an argument by directly invoking 3 plausible principles in the recent literature on grounding. The first principle is the well-foundedness of grounding. Well-foundedness. There is no indefinitely descending chain of grounding, or equivalently, every non-fundamental entity is ultimately grounded in some fundamental entities. You mean it's not turtles all the way down? I thought it was turtles all the way down. Definitely turtles. We take that well-foundedness is a plausible principle about grounding, especially when we are talking about entity grounding as presupposed here. There have already been many attempts to justify a well-foundedness. For example, Schaffer explicitly defends it, thinking that given indefinitely descending grounding, being would be indefinitely deferred, never achieved. To be sure, not everyone agrees, and there are also objections to well-foundedness. For more discussion, see all these folks. However, I'm not able to examine them here, as is my aim is only to show that how well-foundedness can be used to construct a new version of the cosmological argument. Notice that well-foundedness by itself does not directly entail the conclusion that there exists a unique fundamental ground of everything. Well-foundedness says only that every non-fundamental entity is ultimately grounded in some fundamental entities. It does not make the further claim that there is only one such fundamental entity. So it could be like a stool where there's like 3 fundamental entities and everything's, if it's not on one of them, it's on one of the other 2. Okay. Or it could be, I guess, maybe, if it was infinite, then it would sort of lose the point about being fundamental, but so as long as I guess it was finite, this would make sense? Okay, so let's assume it's some sort of finite number of fundamental entities. I mean, knowing people, it's always going to be between like 1 and 10. Like, we never really pick numbers that are like 7,400,612. But just because it's us, I mean, we're always like, okay. I mean, it's like chances are it's like 6 or something. One can therefore accept well-foundedness, but admit a plurality of fundamental entities, for example, fundamental particles or fundamental properties, without postulating any further thing to ground them. The existence of these fundamental entities will be taken as brute facts without further metaphysical ground. So to construct our cosmological argument, we still need further principles. The second principle is a principle of parsimony concerning theory choice, which Schaffer labels the laser in contrast to Occam's razor, like Schaffer's laser. Do not multiply fundamental entities beyond necessity. I mean, really? More precisely, other things being equal, a theory postulating few fundamental entities is better than a theory postulating more fundamental entities. I mean, you're just throwing the word fundamental in there and calling yourself, like, doing something different than Occam, but that's fine. I guess you're allowed to do that. The basic idea behind laser is the intuition that non-fundamental or grounded entities are some kind of ontological free lunch, imposing no extra costs. So when we consider the ontological economy of a theory, only the fundamental entities count. Again, there have been many defenses of laser in the literature. Alright, I mean, this is recent stuff, though. I mean, I don't know what you mean by many, but at least in the last 5 years, then, which I cannot go through here. My purpose only show how laser can be invoked to construct a new cosmological argument. Notice again that laser by itself, even supplemented with well-foundedness, is insufficient to establish our conclusion. Indeed, a theory that postulates a single fundamental entity to ground everything else is ontologically more economical than a theory that postulates a plurality of fundamental entities, but this alone does not make the former a better theory than the latter, for there can be other theoretical virtues that, such as explanatory power or informativeness, that outweigh the consideration of parsimony. We have to show that, other things being equal, the former kind of theories are indeed better than the latter in virtue of their commitments to further fundamental entities. To show this, we will still require some further principles. The princess is in another castle. Huh. Oh, 1 minute. Night bout. Oh man, that's too easy. Yeah, someone's spamming my chat. Oh my god. Shucks. Well, that's why I have Nightbot. You see, I have an internet bot to check up on these people. You see that? The bots are coming for your internet chats. Yeah, don't spam my chat, jerkface. Here is the required principle. It is a principle about what grounds the grounding facts, and by grounding facts, I mean those facts which are about some things being grounded in some other things. So, the principle up says that, given that X is fully grounded in Y, the fact that X is grounded in Y is given that X is fully grounded in Y, the fact that X is grounded in Y is grounded in Y and nothing distinct from Y. So it's all and only grounding. I take it that up is a plausible principle. Let's see. I mean, if this is where the work is going to go, we have to pause here for a second and just consider the principle of up. Some bad jokes using the word up. Probably not worth saying, but given that X is fully grounded in Y, and this was not, fully was not explained, I guess. I mean, I guess it means there's only one fundamental thing that it's grounded in, because it could be grounded in two things. Like, say there were 3 fundamental things, then it was grounded in the first 2 and not the third. So that would make it X grounded in Y and Z, not just Y. The fact that X is grounded in Y is the fact that X is grounded in Y is grounded in Y, and nothing distinct from Y. I'm a little bit like, the fact that X is grounded in Y, given that it is fully grounded in Y, the fact that it is grounded in Y is grounded in Y, so the fact is also grounded in Y, and nothing. Yeah, see, I need some parentheses here, really. Like, the fact that X is grounded in Y, so we got the fact that X is grounded in Y is grounded in Y and nothing. So is this the so I think I got this one. Yeah, I should get a second color here. Or is it going to be parsed slightly differently so that we got the fact that X is grounded in Y is ground Y, and so it's the scope of these things. I'm not 100% sure on the scope issue here. You see what I'm saying? Yeah, I'm gonna get a second color. That's a good idea. So we'll have green and blue or something, so we can talk about scope in definitions. To be clear, peoples. So given the fact it's fully ground Y, the fact that X is ground Y is grounded in Y, and nothing distinct from, I'm not exactly sure how to parse this, but let's I think the first one makes more sense. But this double the fact is also ground Y when X is fully ground Y. You get the fact along with the content of the fact. Okay, moving on. I take it that up is a plausible principle. Bennett, 2017, defends a similar view that she labels upwards anti-primitivism. For another similar view, see DeRoss, 2013. The underlying idea follows Bennett is as follows. Bennett, 2017. Suppose that X is fully grounded in Y, so Y is doing the work of generating X. Yeah, I mean, this is not sure what grounding is, generating exactly means, but let's just assume the grounding work of X. It seems intuitive to think that by generating X, Y also makes it the case that it generates X, and thereby makes it the case, and it makes it the case, it makes it the case, and so on. Yeah, so it's like you're getting the facts along with the content of the facts. All these, including X and the resulting grounds, unfold upwards from the same source, that is, the ground Y. On the other hand, if the fact that X is grounded in Y, if on the other hand X is grounded in Y is grounded in Z, then since Z makes it the case that Y grounds X, Z contributes to the grounding of X and hence also helps ground X. But we've assumed that Y is the full ground of X, so Z cannot be anything distinct from Y. The idea in brief is that whatever grounds an entity also thereby grounds the grounding fact, and whatever grounds the grounding fact also thereby grounds the grounded entity involved. Okay, so we're only talking about proximal grounding. It wasn't the dual, like a stool, like we've got like three things supporting the stool top. This is just like the leg is the top is supported by the leg, which is supported by the foot. So we're just talking about the foot here on one leg, as it were, because it's not a multi-grounding situation. Maybe I'm just wrong about there are multi-groundings, but whatever. So we're talking about you get the fact along with the content of the fact. So I'm a little worried about that. I mean, I'm not exactly sure about the transparency of facts or what else is going on. People throw around facts a lot. I mean, it's 20th century sort of canon, but that doesn't mean there aren't substantial assumptions going into how we get facts and what they are. I mean, full cards on the table. I deny facticity of the universe. I do. I actually deny metaphysical facticity as a good metaphysical principle. Like, get rid of it. It's very useful for all this stuff. I don't think you want to. I think it's a bad idea. Okay. We can now, pro tip. Actually, I'm not a pro, so just a tip. We can now construct our cosmological argument and invoke well-foundedness, laser, and up to show that whatever our best theory is, it will admit the existence of a unique ungrounded entity that ultimately grounds everything else. The argument runs as follows. Consider any theory T. Any theory T. Alright, I'm going to go with the non-facticity of metaphysics. Yeah. Any theory T that one of the people who assume these things are okay would accept. Call it a type 1 theory if it is a theory where every non-fundamental entity is ultimately grounded and there exists a unique fundamental entity. Call it type 2 theory if it is a theory where every non-fundamental entity is ultimately grounded, where there exists more than one fundamental entity. Okay, so now we've got a 1 entity and we got a 2. The 2 has the 2 fundamental entities. Otherwise, call type 3 where there's non-fundamental entity and it's ungrounded, where there is. Otherwise, call it a type 3 theory. That is, a theory where some non-fundamental entity is not ultimately grounded. Clearly, well-foundedness is violated in type 3 theory, and hence, assuming well-foundedness, T cannot be a best theory if T is a type 3 theory. Okay, that's fine. So type 3 theories violate well-foundedness, so we're probably not going to be doing those. Let us suppose that T is a type 2 theory with A1, A2, ... as fundamental entities. We can then construct a second theory, T star, which is exactly the same as T, except that it postulates an extra entity, A0, as the only fundamental entity by the stipulation that A1 is grounded in A0, that A2 is grounded in A0, Is that how grounding works, by stipulation? Okay, but we're going to let that go. Some may wonder whether we can really extend our theory in this way by stipulating grounding. Yes, I do wonder that. It seems very implausible, for example, that we can just stipulate that this table is grounded in the moon, or that some ghost is grounded in natural numbers, and then extend our theory accordingly. But why? Up provides a good explanation, for according to Up, grounding facts themselves are non-fundamental matters, and hence we cannot just stipulate their obtaining or non-obtaining without making a change to their grounds. This explains why in usual cases we cannot arbitrarily stipulate grounding. We cannot simply stipulate that the moon grounds the table or that numbers ground the ghost, etc., without changing the nature of the moon, the numbers, etc. But in our case here, the grounding facts that we are stipulating, that is that A1 is grounded in A0, that A2 is grounded in 0, are supposed to be grounded in A... No, why are they supposed to be? Which is an extra, well, are supposed to be grounded in A0, which is an extra entity to be added. So there's no such worry that by stipulating these grounding facts, we would have to change the nature of something. Whoa. Why not? I mean, why do you assume that the grounding facts A1 and A2 are of the sort of stuff that you can stipulate to be grounded in A0? Maybe the moon is the most fundamental thing in the universe, and everything else sort of depends on that, and that's what A1 is, that the moon is whatever that was. I mean, I don't know what the sort of A1, A2 with like the fundamental entities. It's making some sort of ontological claim about the nature of fundamental things, and that has not, well, it may be very reasonable, but it has not been argued for. And I'm also slightly worried about the sliding between fact talk and object talk, because A1 is an entity, A2 is an entity, but in our case here, the grounding facts that we are stipulating are supposed to be grounded in A0. So we are sliding between the object that we were getting the grounding fact from before and saying, well, that grounding fact is now pointing to a different object. That fact is grounded in something else. Now, because we were I don't know if we were stipulating that the fact we were getting with that annoying principle, fact that X is grounded here, you can just slide this to object Z. I don't know about that. Okay, but let's say because it's a fact and we can move around with the source of facts because they are facts, and as such, facts don't matter where they come from. We can ground it in something else. Okay, so maybe what's happening here is A0 is some like conjunction of all the bigger facts. That you can do. Like, it might be terrible and ad hoc, but we're gonna let's define A0 as some giant set of facts of all the other fundamental entities. So if you have A0, all the fundamental entities, it's the set of all the facts about the fundamental entities, assuming they're non-paradoxical. Okay, so we can probably do that. I think that's kind of ad hoc-y, but we'll let it go because I think this is a way to actually make it somewhat sensical what's going on here. So Up guarantees that we can indeed construct such a theory T star, which is exactly like T, except it postulates an extra entity A0 together with the fact that A0 grounds A1, the fact that A0 grounds 2. Yeah, see, declaring facts is just weird, like, okay. But you're going to say that, but let's just assume that it is this sort of conjunction. Well, I'm assuming it's this conjunction, and then it sort of then does, because it has all the other stuff in it. And also the fact that A0 grounds, the fact that A0 grounds A1, the fact that A0 grounds, the fact that A0 grounds A2, and so on. Presumably, T star is no worse than T in any theoretical virtues like explanatory power or informativeness, for T differs from T only in containing an extra entity A0 and the extra grounding facts it grounds, which should not affect or diminish any of T's theoretical virtues besides economy, sure. But T star contains fewer fundamental entities than T. Yeah, okay. Now we're getting into how we define fundamental here, because it's parasitic on all the other entities. So by laser, T star is a better theory than T. It follows that T cannot be a best theory if it is a type 2 theory. So you've postulated one more fundamental entity, but the more fundamental entity is completely derivative of all the other entities. So by parsimony, T star is a yeah. So it's sort of a question of what do you mean by fundamental at that point. Yeah. Okay. This completes our argument. By well-foundedness, we have shown that no theory can be best if it is a type 3 theory. By up and laser, we have shown that no theory can be best if it is a type 2 theory. Consequently, whatever our best theory is, it has to be a type 1 theory, which admits a unique fundamental entity that ultimately grounds everything else. But if our best theory says that P, we are justified in believing that P. It follows that we are justified in claiming the existence of a unique ungrounded being that ultimately grounds everything else. Okay. Yeah. I have worries. I always have worries, so it's not special. Objections and replies. In this section, I consider two possible objections. The first concerns the alleged novelty of my argument. It's not my concern, but that's okay. For it might appear that my account is just a version of Schaffer's priority monism, which also admits a single fundamental entity, the whole universe, to ground everything it contains. But if so, it seems that I do not really provide a new argument for the existence of a unique ground beyond what Schaffer has done. In reply, I would like to point out two crucial differences that can effectively distinguish my account from Schaffer's priority monism. First, Schaffer's monism involves the controversial claim that the whole is metaphysically prior to its parts rather than the other way around, whereas my argument here involves no such claim. Although Schaffer 2010 has provided good motivations for this priority thesis, including considerations from common sense, quantum entanglement, heterogeneity, and atomless gunk, many may remain unconvinced and still want to embrace the opposite intuition that it should be the parts which ground the whole. My argument is entirely neutral on this issue. It makes no assumption about the priority between the parts and the whole. That's fair enough. Second, and more importantly, the universe in Schaffer's priority monism can provide a ground only for things that stand to it in a part-whole relation. But not everything stands in a part-whole relation, as arguably there are things to which mereological notions are inapplicable. Consider abstract entities such as number sets, universals, etc. In what sense does the number 5 have a part or form part of a material object? Arguably, these entities do not exist in space and time, nor do they have causal powers as material objects typically do. They are not amongst the ingredients that compose the universe. But if these entities do not stand to the universe in a part-whole relation, Schaffer's priority monism will say nothing about how they are to be grounded. Schaffer's monism requires only that everything that is a part of the universe should be grounded in the universe, which leaves it completely open to whether anything that is not part of the universe should be grounded or ungrounded. So we really cannot say that Schaffer's monism also posits a unique fundamental entity that ultimately grounds absolutely everything else, but only that it posits something to ground everything that stands in the universe in a part-whole relation. This therefore distinguishes my account from Schaffer's priority monism. Okay, yeah, I mean, I don't know what Schaffer said. I didn't read that paper, but it's an interesting question about exactly how to cash out a part-whole relation. So, always want to know more about mereology. The second objection is a worry about the principle up. As I explained earlier, my argument really needs this principle for well-foundedness and laser are insufficient to show that type 1 theories are indeed better than type 2 theories, as other things might not be equal. However, some may think that the appeal to up is problematic. Recall that up is the following principle about what grounds the grounding facts. Given that, that's my concern about the facts. Given that x is grounded in y, the fact that x is grounded y is grounded in y and nothing distinct from y. Yeah, the fact that. So it's like, we've got the fact, same. That's no good. So we've got like the x is grounded y. And then you've got like this fact, do I have, what is this? This is a highlighter. So, and it's like the fact that. So we've got like the fact that x is ground y is ground y. So then we've got, now I'm sorry, I need like multicolors to actually get all the different things going on in here. Anyway, but this is up. Okay, so recall that up is the following principle. and that's what it is. But certainly there are alternate claims about what grounds the grounding facts. For example, one may adopt primitivism. Given that X is grounded Y, the fact that X is grounded Y is fundamental and not grounded in anything. Or alternatively, one may hold a downward version of the anti-primitivism, taking the grounding facts to unfold downwards from the grounded entities rather than fold upwards from the ground. Given that X is ground Y, the fact that X is ground Y is grounded in X and nothing distinct from X. Okay, so the fact that something is grounded in something else has to do with the object, not the ground. Okay. Of course, there's also room for a mixed view where some grounding facts are taken to be grounded in the grounds, some in the grounded entities, and some in nothing at all. Now, the problem is that my argument will break down if either primitivism or down is adopted instead of up. See below for more details. If so, one may perhaps resist my argument by rejecting up and adopting either primitivism or down instead. However, I think this is hardly surprising. One can of course resist any argument by rejecting any of the premises on which it rests, but the problem is whether such a rejection is justified independently. We've already given reasons supporting up, so what we are yet to see is whether there are any equally or more convincing reasons for adopting primitivism or down instead of up. Let us consider primitivism first. Why should one want to take grounding facts to be primitive? Presumably, this view is motivated by a certain kind of picture in which reality is endowed with a set of fundamental grounding facts to make things hierarchically structured. You see, I might personally sort of be very skeptical of this, but I mean, for the purpose of this argument, it should be reasonably acceptable. In this picture, things are hierarchically structured by these grounding relations. There's no further ground for their being so structured. Such a hierarchical structure is itself fundamentally a fundamental feature of the world, and the grounding facts that constitute structure are themselves amongst the fundamental ingredients of reality. See, facts as fundamental ingredients of reality. I deny this, but this is definitely what is at issue here, is how you cash out that facts are fundamental ingredients of reality. So there's a big difference between me and other people, or at least in the people discussed in this paper, because they're discussing how to understand facts as part of primitive ingredients of reality, or fundamental ingredients of reality. So it's a different argument I have. So what would be the upholders of primitivism say about my argument? Presumably they can quite agree with my claim that for any type 2 theory which posits A1, A2, ... as fundamental entities, we can always construct a second theory T star which posits an extra entity A0 to ground A1, A2, etc. If grounding facts are all primitive, they should be completely independent from anything else. And hence there seems to be no problem having such a theory T star that posits more grounding facts. But on this primitivist picture, it is no longer the case that this second theory T star is in any sense more economical than the first theory T, for instead of having A1, A2, etc. as its fundamental entities, T star has it as its fundamental facts, the fact that A1 is grounded in A0, the fact that A2 is grounded in A0. The number of fundamental entities is no longer reduced by positing an ultimate ground, for the extra grounding facts also count as fundamental entities according to primitivism. In this way, one may resist my argument by adopting such a primitivist picture. Okay. Yeah, so you're just getting half of one, half of a dozen, sixth of the other. Okay. Okay. Now consider the alternative principle down. This has been explicitly advocated by Fine and Desgupta using considerations about essence. Briefly, the idea is that if X is grounded in Y, then it should be part of the nature of X that it be so grounded in Y. Take, for example, the singleton said whose sole member is Socrates. Intuitively, the singleton is grounded in Socrates. But in virtue of what does this grounding relation hold? It seems that its being so grounded is written in the essence of the singleton, for it is part of the definition of singleton. Part of the definition of singleton Socrates, that it should contain Socrates as the sole member. This then generalizes to all cases. Everything that is grounded in something is so grounded in virtue of its own nature. On this essentialist picture, everything in the world is endowed with an essence to indicate how it is to be grounded. Oh, dagnabbit. I think the upholders of this view also have a response to my argument. Presumably they will agree with my claim that for any type 2 theory which posits A1, A2, ... is fundamental as fundamental entities, if we can construct a second theory T star which posits an extra entity A0 to ground A1, A2, ... then T star would be a better theory than T by positing fewer fundamental entities. But they will deny that we can really construct such a theory T star, for they will deny that we can really posit such an extra entity to ground all the entities without changing the nature of anything. Yeah, because they would have to go through all the entities and realign their essence to point to the new object as the grounded object. Given that these entities are fundamental entities according to our theory T, the essentialist picture in question will require that it be part of their very nature that they are ungrounded. So any such putative theory T star where they are claimed to be grounded in something will presumably not be a theory about the very same entities. This means that we cannot really construct a second theory T star. In this way, one may resist my argument by adopting such an essentialist picture. So one can resist my argument either by adopting primitivism or by adopting Down as alternate principles about what grounds the grounding facts. Does this show that my argument fails? I do not think so. I think it shows only that my argument really requires up, but up is independently plausible. Of course, one may find it more agreeable to adopt primitivism or Down instead of up, but this is far from an independent justification for the rejection of up. So I conclude that this second objection does not successfully refute the cosmological argument I offer in this paper. Okay, that was nice. There's a lot of this background assumption of like how facts and groundedness are related, which is okay because it seems like they're all the people involved in this are mostly on they understand, or they agree on what the playing field is here. So I just don't like the idea of multiplying facts all the time in this grounding talk. Like every time you got a grounded something, there's a fact that goes along with it as a fundamental sort of thing also in the universe, and that's just sort of if you want to talk about parsimony, you're getting facts for free. I mean, and why are the facts free? I don't know. But okay, so a new cosmological argument from grounding. So there is a unique thing on the basis of parsimony, or you need up really. Oh, the other argument I had was, of course, how do you what was it? Where was that thing? Laser up. Well, I can't remember now. It doesn't matter. Anyway, I said it earlier if you're interested. So if you have any questions, concerns, send me a message. I'll try to get to other sorts of I'll get to another paper rather soon. But that's it for now, and thanks for watching.